Welcome to Legends of Tabletop. I'm Eric Askue.
Yes, thank you for joining us today, Eric. Now, please tell us the reason why you had requested an interview with me today.
Did I? Did I request one?
You did, and you have some pretty exciting things going on.
Yeah. Let's see. You know what, Leah? We've got. I'm going to be teaching a new course on uh, how to make models ready for 3D printing to get the to get the best quality out of them. And I'm getting ready to launch my 3D printing tabletop Patreon. Which is where, surprisingly enough, there's been a lot of push from the community for everybody to move away from Kickstarters or move primarily to Patreon versus Kickstarters. So I'm trying to get ready for that. But the big thing right now is the big announcement is that I'm teaching again, and I'm going to be teaching how to take models and make them FDM and SLA print ready, doing supports, doing cut up efficiently. And it's kind of wild because a lot of this is it's experience that I've been gaining over the last 5 or 6 years to add to what I already know. But a lot of the time, what's really weird is that I was approached kind of out of the blue through some friends of mine over at XMD, and XMD is this online course that we're working with. And what's so weird is that I'm really surprised at how many people want to, one, do 3D printing, but don't know how to make a model print ready. In fact, I'm not calling anybody out and I'm not bashing anybody, but I've seen a couple of professionals who have sent models my way and have done things that make models unsafe to print because of print failure. So yeah, and you know, little things like certain types of overhangs, envelopes inside of a model, which is basically like imagine the space between my shirt and my sweater, sweatshirt is really deep. That's an envelope, and that can create an air bubble. Or actual bubbles or pockets inside of the model itself. And both of those things in SLA printing can make the model, it can make the model have what's called vapor lock, and that vapor lock can make the metal unstable and snap it off of the build plate. In FDM printing, which is the filament extrusion style printing, really what that means is that you're making the model overly complex, and it's going to take longer because it's not cleaned up properly. And a lot of people really don't. A lot of people that are getting into 3D printing don't have this experience because they haven't done it professionally. And I'm not trying to sound obnoxious or arrogant. I'm just saying is that they need this information.
Of course.
Because if it's kind of like me going and working on my car after watching a YouTube video.
Yeah.
The car might burst into flames, and then I'm going to be having to take it to the mechanic anyway because I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the experience. So yeah.
I mean, it is understandable, and having done 3D printing myself in the past, having to work with different types of models and just understanding how additive manufacturing, the process of that works, layer upon layer, and then managing to slice that effectively and how to place it in your slicer depending on what program you're using, and what settings to use. Yeah, I mean, and you're providing a valuable service to the community.
Well, that's the one thing that I didn't really go into a lot of with the course is actually the slicers. I actually am using Chai2 box and hold on a second. Let me look at my bar here. Chai2 box and Cura. I'm using Chai2 box and Cura in the course. And the reason I didn't get too much into the slicers is because the slicers are going to be printer specific. Some printers, like say for instance the Form or even the Milkshake, they have their own slicing software. And I really went over a lot of what's generally necessary to understand, that a lot of people don't think about it. They basically say, I'm trying to find an object here. They basically say, hey, I've got an object. I'm good to go. I've made my object. Yeah, exactly. And I'm going
Yeah.
to take that object and I'm going to throw it in my slicer and put it in my printer. And depending on how that object is positioned,
Mhm.
can make all the difference in the world as to its quality, or how much post process has to go into it, or if it's even going to print successfully. Um, so that's really what I went over. Like one of the things that I discussed was keys. I see a lot of people who make keys that are really long, and a key is not structural. A key is only there for alignment. If you look at any model, if you go and buy a model from a manufacturing company, the keys are only there for alignment, and the glue is what makes it structurally sound. And I've seen quite a few professionals make these keys that are a mile long. Well, if you're doing resin, resin has a property where it's going to where if that gets bumped, it's going to shear off like a piece of glass,
Yeah.
and then you're going to be screwed because you'll have nothing to align on. And I was talking with a young guy, another professional, he works in a different industry, and he was having problems because his key tolerances, the distance between the male and the female, were too tight.
Yeah.
And I said, no, no, no. You want to have the female. The female's going to have hard edges, and the
Mhm.
male is going to have beveled edges, beveled corners. Also, the top of the key isn't going to touch, only the side walls. So if you've got a square key, you've got 4 side walls, and then you've got beveled channels, and then the top of the key that should never ever touch. And then you want a small amount of tolerance so that when you put the parts together, the glue will follow the capillary action and provide what you need. And then you'll hopefully have a tiny bit of wiggle room for alignment,
Mhm.
um,
And room for the glue.
and room for the glue. And he was like, wow, I never thought about this. And what's even to further that conversation is that I said, if you're going to print this size and that's your key, don't shrink it. And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, if you shrink your part, you're shrinking your tolerance, meaning that the key is going to get
Mhm.
tighter. And I've
Yeah.
seen more than a few people who have gone with a model that was, say, 150 millimeters and taken it down to 90, and now the key is so tight that it's pushing the model apart, and they have to spend a lot of time with sandpaper trying to remove enough material to make them fit together.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't really understand this because they're not thinking of this. They're not, because this is engineering. They're thinking of everything else. They're thinking of, does it look pretty?
Yeah.
Did I disguise where my key is going to go? All that stuff. But yeah, no, we went over a lot of things. In fact, we actually, one of the things I talked about, and I've just remade or made an additional video for, is mold jackets. We're going to be 3D printing mold jackets.
Oh, nice.
And my boss, can we swear in here? Can we swear in here?
Yes, we're unrated.
Okay. My boss called me a fucking genius.
Yay. Good for you.
Because I managed to come up with a way to both measure the distance for the rubber and the jacket.
Mhm.
And I should explain jackets, but I managed to measure that so we can get a discrete thickness of silicone. And I also managed to create what we're calling in-house, we're calling touch pins. And that's really, really powerful stuff. So just real quick, for those of you that don't know what a mold jacket is, um, let's say that this is a jelly bean. Well, a
Mhm.
jelly bean has the core, which is the jelly, and then it has a candy coating, and then it has a finishing shell. Okay. A mold jacket is a little bit like that. We have the model, then we have a silicone skin that goes around that. Okay. And that'll come off like a sock. Okay. But if we can make it really, really thin,
It's detailed.
Yeah, we can
right?
do more detail, and the jacket will come off more easily. And the more important part is that we use significantly less product, and silicone as a product, it isn't the most expensive thing that we do, but it is up there in the price order. I'm going to adjust this because I think I'm
Mhm.
um, the jacket is usually made of fiberglass and it's hard. What the jacket does is it holds the silicone in place, and now we can do what's known as rotocasting, and we can pour in a film of resin and rotocast large parts and then backfill them with a polyfoam that'll expand and make the thing hard and structurally sturdy but relatively light. In fact, we've made pieces as big as my head or bigger than my head, and the resin is only 25 millimeters thick, and then the rest of it's foam, which is great. But that mold jacket process, it's complex, it's messy, it's uncomfortable to make, it's a pain, it's very expensive, and moreover, uh, on top of all of that, the mold jacket is it's fiberglass, um, and the acid that is used to make the fiberglass cure is very, very dangerous. You get it on your skin, you're going to get burned. You get it in your eyes, you're going to go blind.
Mhm.
We don't we want to move away from it. Well, if we 3D print a mold jacket and we can use it for 100, 200, or 300 uh, castings,
Mhm.
we've got our money's worth. Not to mention that the tolerances of the jacket can be, it can all be built in the computer, and we can move things around. We can adjust things while we're doing it, and that makes it really, really useful. So it looks like we're going to be printing. It should already be printing. We're printing our first mold jacket right now.
Mhm.
Um, Now, I say it's our first mold jacket. Kirk's made many, 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 many mold jackets out of fiberglass. So it's not like the process is alien. It's just the method that we're using is brand new. But I think we're printing it in. I want to say we're printing it in vinyl.
Mm. So
And
you've made that leap then.
yes, and I think that we're going to be able to make tighter silicone jackets. So okay, so when I was learning silicone, I know that we haven't had a chance to ask questions, but let me just tell you this:
It's
when I
okay.
was when I was working silicone, I'd make a box mold. I'd make a box out of foam core, and I'd fill it up with silicone, and then I'd pull it out. Those molds generally they're really hard to work with because they're not as flexible as they could be. And if you're lucky, you'll get 30 pulls out of them. A mold with a silicone jacket, a mold with or mold with a mold jacket is much more flexible, and you can actually get 40 to 45 pulls out of it because of its flexibility and
Mhm.
how you can take it off. So imagine you've got a two-part mold, a beautiful two-part mold, and you can sort of lift it off like a sock, and then you flip it over and lift the other part off like sock. The details will maintain the tightness or the surface without having any parts break away. No, I'm not saying that there aren't exceptions to that, but generally speaking, because the part that's touching the part and the body of it are more flexible, you have a better chance of it keeping its surface without breaking down and deteriorating. Because,
Yeah.
like, let's say, for instance, a piece of the silicone pops off in the hair of this little dragon I'm holding. Well, now when you pour your next casting, because that silicone's missing, you'll have a flat spot that makes no sense. And I've got a couple of models by other people where there's a bit of silicone in the piece.
Mm.
So it was either that was one of the later pulls or whatever. But the pieces after that, there's going to be no more. So yeah, it's to me it's very profound because it's the engineering side of things, and it means that we can make more product um, available for those people that really want to get our stuff,
Yeah.
and it's really exciting to me. So even though I'd rather just be sculpting stuff, knowing the engineering side of stuff and knowing that I can perform that task
Mhm.
is important, because it helps me make better models. In fact, I was looking at another friend's model, and his model looked like models that I had. It looked beautiful, but it looked like models that I had done years ago, and it was all full of like cavities and pockets, and I was like, oh,
Oh.
this would take a month just to clean up. And I started pointing it out to him, and it's like, dude. So I think you become a better artist when you understand the processes that are going to be used down the line. So me understanding how to print on an FDM, how to print on an SLA, how to do the molding and casting, it's going to be a big deal. Or it's a big deal for my work. The only thing you got to be careful of is you can't let those things interfere with telling your story or getting a pose, or having your vision in the piece. You just have to be aware that, do you want to clean it up while you're working on it, or do you want to clean it up at the end when it's more difficult? So yeah, yeah.
So cleaning it up and the construction of it before it's fully actualized in reality would be the better idea there. So, but yeah, tell me more about making the leap to nylon. I've been kind of tempted to do so now that I have a printer that will allow me a greater range of operation.
Well, the main reason that we want to use nylon is that it has a lot of strength,
Mhm.
and the jacket is going to go in a great big machine that's going to slosh the mold jacket around. The silicone will deflect. I think the silicone will deflect as much as 80 degrees. So if you have 100 degrees, 80 degrees of that will be deflected.
Are we talking temperature or
Temperature,
oh, okay, Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Fahrenheit.
Okay,
And these are loose numbers. I'm not being exact, because the
okay.
density of the silicone matters and the type of silicone you use matters. But that's why we see more and more silicone hot pads. I've got a silicone hot pad that's not even, if it's 10 millimeters thick, I'd be surprised. Um, but we were talking about, originally we were talking about really heavy stuff, and I have notes about it on my desk. We were
Mhm.
actually talking about using
PEEK or
yeah, exactly, PEK.
PE?
Yeah, we were
Oh,
talking
okay,
about using PE.
polyethyl ethyl ketone.
Right, and we were talking about a couple of other high temperature FDM style printing materials,
Mhm.
and Kirk was like, "Why? Let's just use nylon. It's going to be easier to work with. We need to get around 85% infill. You can drill into it. It's relatively safe. It's relatively robust, um, and I think our jacket is. I think we're looking at our jacket being on its thinnest about 15 millimeters thick, which is, for those of you that don't know, we're with 3D printing, we use a lot of millimeters. It works better in the computer, it works better on the printers, but 15 millimeters is just over an inch. It's like an inch and a quarter. So the one half of the jacket would be an inch and a quarter. So I can actually show you guys. I have a JPEG of one here.
Excellent.
I'm not gonna open the file.
I'm
Uh,
just going to speak while you do that for those of us that may be listening later on. I'm being shown an image and I'm going to click on that. Oh, look at it. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes.
So this was a silicone mask made by another artist, and then it was 3D scanned, and I made a new base for it and touched it up. And then this is the mold jacket, and it has two shafts at either end, and then it has a thicker bead that goes all the way around it, and that's for the gasket of the silicone. And then the silicone will fill in the cavity. You can see the cavity follows a discrete measurement, and then it's got ribs. So here's a rib, here's a rib, here's a rib, where it gets thicker. Those ribs are both for alignment and structural integrity of the mold itself. They're not terribly large, but they're double the thickness. So if the silicone is 8 to 10 millimeters thick, then the rib is going to be 20 to hopefully not 25, but somewhere between 20 and 25. So this makes a structurally sound jacket. So this is the back part, or this is
That's the front. I was just going to mention, I like the fact that the structural pegs are placed in the back, but that doesn't get the most audience.
well, here's what these actually are. These are touch pins.
Okay.
These are only in here during the clay process.
Oh,
So
okay.
so what we do is this is one of the techniques I came up with. These pins go into the jacket and they're built in so that they're printed separately, and then we drop them into holes in the jacket.
Okay.
And then you rest the model on the touch pins, and you do this side. This side gets clay on it first.
Mhm.
That's where the seam is going to go.
Okay.
Then you put this half of the jacket, the front half of the jacket, on top, and you pour in your silicone, and it fills up this side, the face side.
Mhm.
Then you take the back of the jacket off, you pull all the touch pins out, and and then you take the clay off, and then you put the jacket back on and fill it up with silicone a second time, and that takes care of the back of the mold, so that you get a two-part mold. We're gonna also have this. It also has keys on the side. These are
I
wet.
understand now. It's like a pin and slot almost.
Yeah, yeah, and the touch pins are designed to have. They have 0.01 millimeters tolerance. So they're only there to rest the object against. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, but they're only there during the claying process and the first casting. We're also gonna instead of building them into, we're gonna drill holes into the jacket. So there'll be 1 to 2 holes up here on this edge. There'll be a couple of holes here. We probably won't run holes through the locks, but and then it'll get bolted. Now I talked to Kirk and I'm like, why don't we use the C clamps, the trigger pump C clamps,
Mhm.
and he said that they have a possibility of coming off. So
Yeah.
we're still trying to push these things to be easier to work with, but right now we're going with the most traditional format.
So how do you deal with the issues of flash
Well, there
regarding
should
the finished product?
if the well this thick bead here.
Mhm.
If you imagine that this is full of clay and flat, and
Okay.
then you take hoop a hoop tool. It looks like it looks like a piece of wire stuck in a pipe,
Yeah.
and you carve a distinct hoop all the way around.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's your gasket,
Okay.
because one side will be male and one side will be female, and they'll interlock. And if they're put together properly with enough tolerance, there should be minimal to no flash.
Okay.
And that's how the silicone is done. So you have to be thinking through each process. So if you look, like I said, if you start from the model and move outwards, there's the model, there's the silicone, and then there's the jacket. The jacket has discrete keys built into it.
Mhm.
Well, the silicone is going to have keying system built into it too, except it's built like the gasket on your water bottle, say, for instance. There's a deep recess, and in the case of this, it's silicone on silicone, so it's rubber on rubber.
Okay.
You don't have to do hard to soft like your water bottle would do, but you're using that same thought process.
Okay.
And then
Wow.
these are the bung holes. So
Okay. For the lost wax technique is where I would know that from. But
we could we could actually fill this up with wax and then use that model to make lost wax. But yeah, lost wax, you wouldn't need a jacket, and the mold would be made out of plaster.
yeah, plaster
Generally,
Paris, yeah.
right, and then the plaster and the wax have to go in an oven and be brought up to temperature slowly.
Mhm.
The wax disappears or burns off, and then you pour metal in and fill the cavity and cross your fingers that plaster doesn't fracture during the metal, the injection or the
Yeah.
implementation of the metal. So yeah.
Oh man. And then hope that lead rot doesn't set in years down the line.
Well, I wouldn't use lead. I'd use copper or brass.
Yes.
I
Oh man.
don't want to be anywhere near heavy metals. But yeah. But we all know that even light metals can mess you up. You've heard that aluminum. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that aluminum oxide causes is linked with Alzheimer's now. So
Yeah. At least that is some of the word on the street.
yeah, I'm not a doctor. I was like, yeah.
No, that's what I'm just kind of I'm gonna try to distance just a little bit and be like, word on the street is. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, what other materials have you used?
We've done lost wax for jewelry. The jewelry was all done with Argentinian silver, which is a type of stainless silver.
Mhm.
But it doesn't give you people rashes. People that normally have rashes and stuff, they're allergic to. I believe there's copper in sterling silver, or something. Or nickel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Argentinian silver has a different metal in it that does the same thing but doesn't give people a reaction. So I've got we did a couple pieces with that. Done resin, done wax, done toy making, done
Speaking of toy making,
all of it.
you're gonna talk some more about that class.
Oh yeah. Well, you asked me what materials.
I did, didn't I? We
Yeah.
can revisit that later. But you started
It-
talking about toy making, and I'm hyped up.
well, one of the things that we talked about in the class that we kind of did an overview of, because I didn't go too in depth, is inserting joints. And I see a lot of people trying to build the joints into their 3D printed stuff, and I'm just sort of like, eh. I personally, because of the tolerances of joints and the materials used in both FDM and SLA printing, um, I I show them how to build them and the recommended way of building them, which is to build them loose. Like for instance, uh, pin joints, a joint where two parts come together and you use a metal pin. That I'm comfortable with, but generally speaking, I want higher quality joints. So I said, like this guy, go
Mhm.
and buy your joint, and his wrist,
Articulated, yes.
yeah, his wrist is a Japanese style ball joint. You can
Yeah.
buy kits of these, and
Mhm.
it's just a swivel. It's just a swivel with two pins sticking out the other side. And if you know that tolerance, you build that into your arm and your model part, and then it's like, okay, get the 3D print, get the ball joint, pop it in, a little bit of glue, little tiny bit of glue because you don't want to get it in the joint, and
No.
now you have a much more elegantly articulated part,
Mhm.
which means you have to go online and shop. You can't just build it all in the computer. But I don't believe you should build it all in the computer. There are some things that somebody's already manufactured and built for you. Go find it, do that part, and build the thing you need in the computer that no one else has built before. Just like your light,
I'm
just like your light stand.
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Before we started this interview, kind listeners, there there's a project that I'm trying to do, a home improvement project of sorts. And yeah, Eric so kindly has offered his guidance toward the completion of said project. But I just went and looked on Thingiverse, and on the cover page, they've got the Flexi Dragons that
Oh,
have
nice.
the little joints built in, and that was actually one of my first prints. Was the Skullbot
There you go.
many years ago. Um,
Those things are really really cool, and it's
so
funny that
I mean, there's
somebody.
something to be said with the joints included in the print.
Well, all right. So let me ask you this: wouldn't you say that the joints in those prints are very, very sloppy, very, very loose?
They could be better. Yes. And they're very particular. I had to do a couple of reprints, yes. But then
So
again, this was with my Kickstarter backer version of the M3D Mini that I
right,
used for
right.
many years.
Most of the time when I'm talking about it, and not to be defensive, it's fine to build parts that you can 3D print that have joints in it. However, if you want something that has very tight, articulated movements,
A finished product.
a finished product, something that you could see being made by a major toy manufacturer,
Mhm.
you don't want a joint that when you pick up the leg, for instance, it's flopping off, or
Yeah.
or it bends on its own and doesn't stay in position when you do things like that. This model is one of the models I keep on my desk because it has by far the best examples of joints that I've ever seen. In fact, the shoulder, for instance,
Mhm.
is it's got a there's one, two, three, four, just between the body and the deltoid. There's four articulations of movement in here, and that's really extreme to have four movements in this tight of space
For an
for
act.
for a 9-inch figure.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, for scale too, that's pretty damned impressive.
yeah, and I mean the joints are great, but I think that if I gave this to my nephew who's 3,
That wouldn't work well.
it would get broken. Some of the joints, like the knee, are very robust. All of the body joints are really good, but this one, the elbow and the wrist, are really kind of delicate um, by comparison of everything else.
Mhm.
So if I were making one of these, that's why I'd be like, hey, go get the Japanese style toy joints, the ones that they use for things like Gundams and whatnot,
Yeah.
and for dolls. I know that they have dolls and action figures and such.
And
Go
rare
get
earth magnets for your miniatures too, just to switch
yeah.
out weapons with ease.
Well, this
Oh,
guy's arms come off because he's got
oh,
different
okay,
types of arms.
okay.
And these are custom joints, but they're so well made. It's just I love well made toys, which is why I'm kind of like a
Kind
little
of why you're
jealous.
teaching this class?
Yes, this kind of stuff gets me excited. And here's what's great. I don't know how well you got your viewers can see this, but this is pocketed in just such a way, and that's kind of the thing I talked about. I talked about pocketing the joint mechanism so that if you put it together, it overlaps the joint a little bit, and maybe it overlaps a little bit of the arm. And this is all black, so it's hard to see. But
And in essence, it does obscure the way that it's put together.
exactly, and to me, that's the difference between a good product and just something that's thrown together. It's kind of like the puzzle boxes. You ever seen those where the wood is so tight that the tolerances are just
Mhm.
unreasonably snug, and then the stuff can be, if they're really well made, it's a level of work and craftsmanship. But on that same note, something that functions really well is another thing, which comes back to the keys. And if you think about the keys, when I was talking to that guy that I was telling you about, the one that made the keys tolerances too tight,
Sized
yeah,
device, yeah.
I said the perfect example of that is the Kalashnikov rifle. If you know anything about guns, and I'm not saying that anybody that's watching is going to know this, but they're very loosely put together. Those things, this is one of the reasons that they're everywhere. They're very loosely put together, but it's loose enough to function. You could throw you could have that thing in a sand dune, pull it out, kick it off, slap a clip in it, and or maybe even spray it down with oil, and then start using it, and it's going to work. Some equipment, and I don't have the other example. Some equipment though can't do that. The tolerances are too tight, and a grain of sand will lock it up and gum it up and make it not function. So the situation matters when you talk about tolerances. Sometimes tolerances that are really elegant and snug are very pretty, but they're not going to function if you mistreat them. Where the looser tolerances, um, they may be crude, but they're designed that way for the purpose, and that purpose is better for what those things are. So it's situational, and I love both because I understand engineering in that way, which is mostly cursory, not. I'm not building helicopters over here,
No,
but
no.
uh, so
But as long as we can build a better, let's say if we can build that's one of the things that I loved about the GoBots versus the Transformers, is that the GoBots were so better manufactured than the Transformers were.
well, it depends on what country you're in. It depends on what country you're in, because
Oh
apparently the Japanese had much nicer Transformers than we ever did. But then again,
oh,
I think the American children, and I'm speaking for myself, were really, really
really
tough with
rough.
our toys.
Yes.
I had one of those Transformers. I think my Transformer transformed into, it was the green one. I think it transformed into a car and a helicopter and a robot. And somebody got a hold of it and took it into a sandbox, and
Oh no.
it never articulated properly ever again. And I didn't have the skills, the knowledge, or the tools
A
to take it
can of
apart and
air.
clean it. Oh man, yeah, a can of air would have helped. And I love that thing, and then it disappeared, and I remember that thing being particularly tight as toys are concerned.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm I I know I was approached about doing this from friends of mine, but the truth is that anybody wants to talk to me about toys or
Uh-huh.
props or movies
Yeah.
or like 3D printing or making monsters, or
Mhm.
I mean, I I know they say you shouldn't meet your heroes. I would give up almost anything to hang out with Adam Savage for a day and talk about making stuff.
Oh
I
man.
love making things. But I'm gonna say this. I've I'm not trying to be an elitist, but I like making things in the computer and then printing them out. I'm not so much, sadly, I'm not a cosplayer. I'm not gonna sit down with a box of foam padding and building armor. I like to build it in the computer because I can do everything there and I have every tool at my disposal. And then I print it out and it's done. Except for, well, it's not done. It's printed out and it's most of the way done. It needs to be finished, primed, painted, and assembled with straps and whatever, or make molds out of it. Um, but all of the same skills of building something in the real world versus building something in the computer are still there. You need to know your measurements. You need to know clearances. You need to know who's going to use it next. Who's going to, do what with it. What's its end result going to be? And a lot of people that are getting into this stuff, they're not exposed to that, or they don't understand that is what's going to make them successful, not whether they can make a great object. You can make all the great objects in the world, but if you can't hand it off to somebody else,
Yeah.
it's useless. um, it doesn't work. It's like somebody showing me a nice painting on the computer. It's like, great, I want a print or a copy of it to hang it on my wall. You can't do that. Great, it's on the computer. It doesn't mean anything to me. I can't make a connection with it.
Mhm.
Cosplay is the same thing. Until the person is invested,
Mhm.
what's the point? Normally we're invested because we consume the media. We've played the video game or watched the movie. Okay, there's our character, our favorite character dressed. Somebody's dressed up as that. I need to get photographed as that, or in some cases, I need to make the costume. and that's when you're connected, that's when you're involved, and that's when it's like so, yeah, exactly, you get giddy and it's like
Yeah.
exciting, and it's so yeah. I'm hoping that I'm going to get quite a few people that are going to come and learn from me, because although a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is the technical side of things, it's all designed to make their product something that they can hand off to somebody else.
Yeah.
So
Ultimately, I mean, isn't that the goal? To let other people enjoy what you create?
I think so. I mean, that's where it all started. Some dude was in a cave and he's like, I'm gonna draw me a buffalo.
Yeah. Look at my buffalo.
And then he was like, Mom, look what I did. She's like, good, you drew one. Now go out and get me one because I'm hungry and I can't leave the cave.
Well, Ma, you can look at that buffalo and imagine what I'll be bringing back. So,
Exactly. But
yeah,
I think that, that's a major part of art, is part of art, part of what we do is media. It's about sharing it, but more importantly, it's about the connection.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of people will come and check out the course and they'll realize what I'm doing, and a lot of the weird tricks and tips like my CAT scan technique,
mhm.
will help them really understand what it is they're making, that they won't understand until it's either failed on the printer or until they have to, go back and fix it themselves. Yeah.
So yeah, a failed print is not a welcome sight.
No,
Yeah.
and you know what? I was just talking with my business partner. Um, he apparently had gotten a print. He'd gotten a part and he was going to print it, and he started printing it and it failed. He found out it failed because he didn't get it. He didn't get it from the original artist, I don't believe. I think he got it secondhand, and the secondhand person had stretched it or had elongated it, and so the overhang was too severe, and
Oh,
it had come with instructions saying supportless.
uh-oh.
So
Uh-oh.
so he called up the original artist and started like chewing the poor guy out. Yeah, and he's like, so and so had it last.
Oh, no. Ah, what
And
did
the two
you
of them
do?
went and beat him up.
Oh, man. But yeah, one of the things that I do like about the new Kira 4.1, I'm using 4.1 with Creosum. Um, I love the conical support option. Have you used that?
I haven't, because I'm trying to see if I can open it. I don't have I don't have it in front of me.
Oh,
I was using one of the things I was teaching was CUR. Oh, that's Y.
yeah.
I can't spell.
Hey, curry is good. There could have been worse autocomplete things that showed up there.
I also have the 4.1. I have not explored that. What I was doing was I was going through and I was showing people that to optimize certain supports,
Mhm.
if you're clever enough, you can use tree supports or you can build handmade supports. Um, a lot of the handmade supports that I use are just sort of like when I build a model, I cut them. When I build models, I'd rather build a model that's mostly supportless or that I have custom supports on it, because I will cut the model up so that I don't have to use supports.
Mhm.
I'd rather clean up a seam, because with a
Yeah.
little bit of epoxy sculpt and some water, it's super easy to finish a seam,
Mhm.
rather than like cleaning up supports. So the few times that I do use supports, most of the time I use one, or I'll hand do it. So like let's say it's this shape,
Mhm.
I'll use a tree support and I'll do like this,
Mhm.
or actually I might actually do I'll do like this, and that's if I'm paying attention to the positioning of things, that may be all I need. So hopefully there won't be a lot of touch points.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at Cura's new support system because I still prefer to use something like Chaitu Box's
Mhm.
tree-based supports, and then bring it over to Cura
Well,
and
they
put
have
that.
tree supports as well.
Though they've added tree supports
Yeah.
in Cura. See,
Yeah.
I haven't. Like I said, I don't use supports a lot. I
Yeah, I mean, you infected me with that desire because I've started having many, many more successful prints just by choosing to print in such a way that I don't need to use supports.
well,
It's much cleaner and it's more easier to finish.
yeah, and it's safer. You have less failures in the
Yes,
printing world. Well, that's something that people don't know. They're just like, hey, I've got I've got an object. I'm gonna print it like this. I was like, I'm looking at him. I'm like, are
no.
you mad?
Yeah,
Make it simpler on yourself.
just lay it flat on the bed if you're going to do something like that. But I mean, yeah, it's just changing orientation and rotation so that the build lines will make it more structurally sound.
Absolutely, absolutely. And ah, I, this is the kind of thing that when I got really lucky. The community that is really into printing is mostly hobbyists.
Mhm.
So I kind of like to think of myself as a character who I'm not going to name. If I named him, you'd know who it was, and then you'd make fun of me forever. But I like this character because he was like the master's master. And what he would do is he would go and make stuff and then leave it in the village for other people to find,
Aw.
other masters to find. And then they would find it and learn tricks that
Mhm.
he was leaving behind for them. To some degree, my level of experience going into a hobby realm is a little bit like that. I will build things like
Mhm.
this and
Yeah.
say supportless, and somebody will be like, how is that supportless? You've got undercuts here and overhangs here, and that
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense. And then they open up the file and it's like, it prints in two halves. Oh,
Uh-huh.
that's it? That's all you have to do? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I don't know. I know that I'm really you have no idea how excited I am to speak with you because not many people in my life even know what the heck I'm talking about unless I go to my local makerspace. And I'm fortunate enough to have two by me. So I mean, I have the Black and Beach one down at the library, and then I also have Hammer Space is my local space. And that's what I was doing earlier is I was trying to find a picture of the owner of my local makerspace with Adam at a convention that he went to in Chattanooga. Uh,
See, Adam's book came out, and he was in New York, and I'm like, I wish I had a couple bucks so I could go traveling because New York is close to me, and I have a makerspace here, and I've done a talk with them, I would love to get more involved, but I'm also kind of like, um, the the guy running the print shop. He's a really great guy. He's somebody I want to associate with, but he's the kind of guy that he's much more interested in the hardware end
mhm.
of things and not so interested in making the items that are going to be printed off of it. So
Oh,
it's not a bad thing. It's just that everybody's got their different orientation.
I
I
bet
want to.
he has that thing dialed in.
Oh, he does, and they have a bunch of printers that are I'm just sort of envious about. They have one printer in particular that they just got that is it's considered one of the fastest FDM printers. It's one of those, I forget what they call them, where they've got three arms and the head moves around.
Oh, yes. What is it? A larger TiVo Tornado or
Uh,
whatever?
I think it might be, and it's a Delta printer, isn't it?
Oh, yes, yes, Delta.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So those types of printers, and this thing he just got, and he showed it to me, and it's amazing. I really wish that they had. I wish there was more. I wish I was in an area where there was significantly more need for that kind of thing, so I could communicate with more people who want to do that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Because as somebody that builds the assets, okay, think about it this way: you have a Honda Civic,
Yes.
and then you put a straight 6 into that Honda Civic.
Oh my.
Sure, it's going to go fast, but it's going to be out of balance. It's not really built for it, so on and so forth. I feel that a lot of what we do with 3D printing is like that. There's not a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are really interested in 3D printers. There's a bunch of people that are interested in the making of the items that go into the 3D printers, and then there's a lot of disconnect, meaning that people are like, I want to print a life-size horse
Okay, well,
on a on a CR10.
yeah, no, no, you gotta chop that thing up, and then you gotta slice it right, and then you
Right. Yeah, yeah,
make sure you put it all together. Yeah, and
exactly.
then once
But and then there's the guys that are like, then there's the guys that are all about the printers, and they're printing out like tessellated, like horribly tessellated, like 50 polygon Pikachus,
yeah,
and then they print out a dozen of them,
why?
and
Oh,
I'm just sort of like,
mm,
you know, you guys really need to start coming together. And you know what it is, it's almost like the game industry, where you have the programmers who are like, in my experience, and I'm not trying to be obnoxious, but in my experience, the programmers who are like, yes, we make 6 figures, we're kind of elite, or we're elite, and we're not those nose picking artists down there who are making characters and animation and are all grubby and
mhm,
whatever. And then the artists who's like, I just want to make cool stuff and get paid to do it. And this is my experience because I'm the artist, so I'm not trying to pick sides. I'm really not, because some of my best friends are programmers. But I think that it's a lot like that. I think that the people that want to print cool things like tabletop assets for gaming,
yeah,
they're kind of like the artist people, and then the guys that want nothing to do with them but just get the printers to do crazy things, they're
mhm.
like the programmers. And it's kind of like, you
Oh,
guys gotta come together.
that's right, because I just saw the mod for the CR10 to
Yeah.
turn it into a CNC. Almost like a laser cutter. That's what it was. There's a laser cutter mod that you can get for your
one of
CR10.
one of my friends just had the most horrible experience with the laser cutter.
Oh God.
He bought one of these Kickstarter kits, and the laser
Oh,
wasn't powerful enough to cut through cardboard. And as he turned it up and turned it up, the laser mechanism burned out,
oh,
and he had made a whole bunch of product for people, and the product was it was like one of those, it was those what are they using, that layered wood. It's not plywood, but it's that laminated layered wood.
mhm.
They were using that, and it would cut through it, but it would almost cut through it like a really random dot matrix, so you'd go and try and pop out the parts, and
Shards.
and shards, just shards and shards, and the
Oh,
layers would tear off, and it was a complete fiasco. um, Over at Holding Creations, the other company I work with, because I work with two companies primarily, Holding Creations and Collapse Industries.
yeah.
um, he has a much more powerful laser now. He burned his laser out as well recently, but he's putting in thousands of hours a month.
Mhm.
So he's going to get a new laser. Even he said to me, he's like, you need to have a laser of this caliber, and then you need to calibrate your speed to make sure that it's cutting through. Um, I've seen some really nice stuff done with it, but I'm not interested. And I'm not interested only because I really think that it's going, to some degree, I think it's going backwards from what you can do with 3D printing.
Yeah, because I mean, just like that project that I came to you with when we first started talking um, earlier today, I at first I thought, well, I guess I could take some plastic down there and have them cut through like the cardboard type of plastic
Yeah.
for signs and stuff. I was thinking like, well, maybe I can do that and just do it that way.
Uh,
Be
you know what that's
fast.
you know what that stuff's called? It's called coral.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
I have a friend that works in science. Anyway, go ahead.
That's okay. I thought about doing it with that and just hot gluing it together. And then I'm thinking to myself, no, that's gonna, the first strong wind that comes by, it's going to fall apart. So
And then your homeowner is then your homeowners association is going to be all over you, and you're going to be miserable. And
yes. Well, that's what they get for taking away my damn light. So,
I, we shouldn't talk about that because you're going to make me angry.
right.
Anyway, no. Yeah, I think that in a lot of ways, because when I think about the laser cut stuff, I think about the old style dinosaurs that I would get at the hobby shop, and you'd pop out all the ribs and then you put them together, and that's and it's I'm not gonna
It's
lie,
two-dimensional and cardboard.
yeah, and it's beautiful and it's great. But then I think, okay, I went to art school, and when I started art school, we built our whole portion of our foundation semester was building things out of cut cardboard, and that's great for a mock-up or even a
Mhm.
prototype.
Yeah,
But if you're going to use it as an installation, or if you're going to be seriously playing with it,
needs to be sturdier.
yeah. And the truth is that there are things that you can do with it that are amazing. I've seen some extraordinary things done with it, but I feel that it's really backwards because, as somebody that has gone into full 3D sculpting and designing and thinking about all this other stuff, 3D printing is what's going to move forward. 3D printing is what's going to bringing about what some of the futurists are calling the third industrial revolution,
Yeah,
or the third industrial age. 3D printing is what's going to go to the moon and print buildings with moon matrix,
yeah.
not laser cutting. I think that laser cutting, I think laser cutting might actually be an older technology. Now that I think about it, I think it's really taking a step back. I
I
think that
remember seeing examples of laser cutting uh, in the early 80s at the VA near San Francisco. An optometrist pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, you want to play with the laser and some what's it, carbon paper?" And so we did that, and it was pretty cool. But it's had its time, and you're
I
right.
I think it is. However, I think that there's a lot of people though that really are going to keep pushing with it, because at least in tabletop gaming, there's a lot of people using it.
Mhm.
I just don't appreciate it in the same way that some of these people do because of my experiences. I want to move forward. I don't want to go to an older technology to work on a new project, because, and I'm not saying that again. I'm not trying to be elitist. I mean, if you say, "Hey, we need to drill a hole," I'm going to go get a drill. I'm not going to get a hand crank. You
Yeah,
know, I want to get the job done. I want to make things of a specific context or articulation or detail level. Um, I think that lasers are cool, but I also think it's a step backwards. I've seen some nice things done with them. I've seen some things that I'm like a little jealous of, but I think that because you really can't do bevels easily. You really can't do a lot of other things easily. It's very much step form or stacking forms. There's really particular.
where you
There's
have to
really
cut out the layer and then put the layer on top of.
Right. It's almost like here's the side of the building, and then okay, now we got to put the window frame on, and then okay, if we want bricks, we have to put on each brick at a time. It's not all built in one matrix or one object that
Yeah,
print it out and plop it on. Um, I think one of its real upticks that people are probably really excited about. It in some ways, I think it might be cheaper. If you're looking at material costs, it may be cheaper.
true.
Period. It may also be faster because you're really only working in X and Y. You're not having to deal with any Z, but you have to print out all. But then you have to figure the man hours. I have to punch out all the parts, and glue it all together. Whereas if you make one of my things for tabletop, once it's printed, it's like a couple of pins, slap it on. Do
Mhm.
I need to sand it, or can I
Right.
hit it with a sponge and then go?
Mhm.
And I'd rather do that. I'd rather couple of alignment pins, a touch of glue, maybe a little touch of sanding, sponge some colors on it, and put it on the table. Um, I just don't want people thinking that I'm being negative, because the truth is that you should always use the best tool for the job, and what works for you is what works for you. I'm just saying what works for me is I want 3D printing. I want advanced, fun, crazy things,
Yeah.
like trees.
Mhm.
Yes, you could do a tree with laser cutting, but you're gonna be like,
Good.
you're gonna be
That's three
sitting there.
dimensional.
Yeah, it's gonna look like one of the.
Hold
It's
it.
gonna look like one of the dinosaurs. It's like, I gotta put this
One of
piece
those
in to put this piece in
pop-up
to put that
parts.
branch. Yeah, it's like to put that branch on, and then that branch looks like rib cages. It's like, you and your laser. Why does everything have to stink like burnt wood?
Mm.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Are you okay? Don't cough now.
Yeah,
Don't.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Oh my goodness. But yes, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you today, Eric?
Um.
And what should we all be aware of?
I'm going to tell you what you guys should be aware of. If you want to come and check out XMD, go to XMD, look up XMD. You can check out the course. I believe the title of the course, which I came up with, was, I'm pretty sure it's moving between dimensions.
Yes. And
Because
there's
you're
a
going.
link in the description of this video on YouTube right now.
Okay. So there is that. On the other side of things, Worlds Overrun Tabletop Gaming is going to have a Patreon, which I need to launch on the 5th. And we're going to have a lot of neat stuff. I've got a writer working with us. We're going to be producing a book. Right now, its working title is Agents of the Ascension for 5e.
Yay!
I can't talk anymore about that because we're going to be doing characters and game stuff.
Oh,
But
cool. So is it going to be pre-gen?
I don't want to. I can't confirm or deny what. But I will say this: the way that we're doing it is not this first month, but maybe 2 months down the road. We're working towards it. Maybe a month or two down the road.
Mm-hmm.
What it is that the characters, you can purchase the characters and print them out, but you can also purchase the story, and the story comes in 2 parts. It comes in hold on a second. Each packet is, this is the intro with all the stats that you need to know, and you can use that intro to create your own story based on the new world that we're releasing. Or you can get both parts, which is, here's the intro, and then here's the entire story campaign for your people to play with.
That's cool.
So you can actually use it in multiple ways. My writer has written, Mr. Miller has written professionally for comic books and been paid for it. He's written for other things too, but I don't remember everything. He is probably one of the most gifted D&D storytellers, and he is really happy to be working with me. We're still trying to figure out how to monetize his stuff. That's why it's going to take us some months to get everything ready to go. But this is going to change how people see Dungeons and Dragons.
Awesome.
And it's gonna, and all the characters, almost all the characters, not every single one of them, almost all the characters will be playable, but they will be put out as NPCs or as characters that you fight against.
Oh wow.
So if you say to me, she's like, I like this one, who's this thing.
Yeah.
Can I play it? There's going to be a character sheet for that.
Oh, cool.
So you could say, I want that character. Well, you take that character and then you set it up as you'd set up your own character sheet, where it's got, okay, I'm going to edit these stats, but these are the limitations of this being, and then these are the benefits of this being, and how do I get these things? You can change it all up for yourself, but the character itself, the core character, will be available as a playable character.
Awesome. Now with what is it, XMD?
XMD is the online school that I'm associated with, and I'm teaching my first course, which is all about making your models print ready, and trying to make them as close to bulletproof as you can get them, making them so that you will be able to print without having significant headaches.
Yes.
So if you're a novice or an intermediate, and in some cases even an expert, it's going to be worth your time and aggravation to take the course.
Excellent. So when does this start?
I think it starts, don't quote me on this, I think it starts midway through next month. I could be grossly mistaken because the date got changed on me. Is
Oh,
it,
okay.
well, I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked at it in a bit. I'm trying to see if I can open it real fast.
Okay.
The date was changed on me, and I'm pretty sure it was pushed out. So it thinks as late as the 15th. It's sometime next month.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's sometime next month. But people should be, if somebody's interested in it, they should sign up within a, you know, I think it's a 6 week course, but they should start looking to sign up for it within the next 3 weeks.
Cool.
I know that we've got. I know that I've got one person buying just the video content, and then I think I've got. I'm pretty sure I've got 5 people who are going to take the actual course where they'll watch the video content and then meet with me in a group. I think once or twice a week. I think it's once a week for updates, notes, and homework stuff. Which is why the price is what it is, because it's my time that I'm putting
Yes.
into not just the material, but putting into the students, answering the specific questions. How do you do the thing that you did? Why are the tools that you made all standardized? That kind of thing. These are the standardized tools that we use, and these are the reasons we use it. And filling out that stuff that somebody's going to have an obscure question like that didn't cover in the video. That's what the one-on-one time is for, and show me examples of, oh, hey, why wouldn't you cut off every finger? Well, how big is your model going to be? Do you really want the poor guy having to glue each finger on,
Yeah.
at 9 inches? So yeah.
Cool.
So XMD. There's a bunch of other courses. I work with a bunch of other professionals. All of the people teaching, just so you know, and I didn't think of saying this, are leads for the companies they're associated with. I happen to be the lead over at Collapse Industries, but I also have my own brand and business. The guy, I think Ashley, is teaching Hair for Games. He's the lead. I think the studio he's at is in Montreal.
Uh-huh.
So all the guys are leads, guys, and there's a young woman who, I say young, she's younger than me, but she's an adult. There's a woman who's also going to be teaching at some point. She's going to be teaching more of the hardware of 3D printers because she works at a major shoe company, which I could name. I can see the shoe in my head, but I don't remember the name of it. She works at a shoe company, and she helps with maintaining 3D printers for the manufacturer and design of shoes,
Ah,
like sneakers, like shoes that you would recognize if I could remember the name of it.
well, you know what? We're going to find this out in a very brief moment as soon as I pull up the right tab.
She may not be listed. She may not be listed yet.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Aha. New tab. There we go. New courses at XMD. Let's see. Character creation for collectibles with Spicer McLeroy. Hey, sculpting collectibles in ZBrush. And then we've got AAA Salon, game hair creation. Yes.
Yep, that's Ashley.
Yeah. XMD Academy, becoming Unreal from concept to playable. And I take it that is with the Unreal Engine.
Yes.
All right. 3D VFX rendering, mastering, on demand only with Gary Lewis. Or Jerry. Gary or Jerry?
I'm pretty sure it's Gary.
Okay. Okay. Gary Lewis, and that is choosing how and what to render is hard. And one of that, all the render settings in 3D applications can be a huge undertaking. And on top of that, you need to understand what all the setting mean and how to change them for different rendering situations. Yes, that's kind of like 3D printing in general, just with basics. For me, I was overcome for the first 6 months or so. And then there you are, moving between dimensions, toy manufacturing, 3D printing pipeline with Eric Askue, going over how to prepare models for FDM and SLA printers. Now I see the one that you're holding there. It's this
Actually,
wonderful head.
that's being held by my boss, and that is that was a commission. That's a baby dragon. It is the single largest print we have done to date. It is roughly 3.5 feet long. It was ordered by a famous painter. His name is I refer to him as Uncle Rick. He's a friend of mine. His name is Rick Cantu, and if you guys want to see some wicked cool painted statues for monsters and stuff, he's painted Simon Lee. He's painted, I'm pretty sure he's painted the Shiflett brothers at one time or another. He's painted all sorts of cool things, and he's an absolute god with an airbrush. I love the guy. He commissioned me to make this baby dragon, and I cannot wait to see it painted and fully assembled, because
Yeah.
then I can put it up on my art station and say, I made this. but
Yes.
but he was pretty excited to see it coming to fruition, and he's like, how big can we make it? I'm like, as big as you want. How much money you got?
Oh man.
and,
So
and
that definitely does fall into the Venn diagram of good and fast, and well,
I
expense determines the other two.
I'm gonna say this. I know I don't know how much more time we have, but let me just say this.
What's that?
I love to make new and exciting things. I wish I could go back and make some minor changes to this dragon, but I do love it. This dragon, in all honesty, was just about the most perfect job, because it was, I have some money, make me a thing, and then I'm going to leave you alone to make it. And I made it. I made the baby dragon in about a week and a half. I showed it to him at every major stage. So block out, primary structures, and then finish. I showed it to him at every stage, and at every stage he was like, can we make this minor change here? Can we do this thing there? Can we do whatever? And he wasn't, um, he's a friend, so he's probably one of the easiest people to work for, in the sense that he's a friend. I want to say this, and this is not, I'm not trying to get into a rant. I love working with Rick, but I have had to fire, in my career, I've had to fire 2 clients. Now, I've had a couple of people who are like, you can fire a client? Well, you can walk away from a job, or you can,
Yeah, you can.
yeah, and I fire them. I'm like, I'm firing you. What? How can you fire me? Well, because you're a pain.
Yes.
I wish more artists would stand up for themselves as creators and designers and makers of things, and would not tolerate bad attitudes, unprofessionalism, micromanaging, or 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 difficulty with pay. I wish more artists had the, I have no nice way of saying this, but the stones.
Resources
The,
to
well,
have that,
it's
because
not.
there's a point where it's like, okay, I've got to make a living. I need what this can bring in for me.
I part of me, part of me, all of me understands that, but more importantly, if artists would be less tolerant of bad behavior from clients, um, clients might be a little less difficult. It's, there's 2 things I can't tolerate, because it undermines my ability to make a thing: micromanaging and general unprofessional, ugly attitudes. The first client that I fired, every time I was trying to show them something to check off, all they could talk about was the things they hadn't done yet. And I said, that's not what we're talking about today. They didn't get it. They didn't want to hear it. They just wanted to focus on, why haven't you taken care of this? Because building a thing as an artist, anything, is a process. You go through a process. And this individual was, not only did they think who the hell they were unreasonable at the conversation that I needed to have to produce their work. And I was like, here's your files. I don't want your money. I don't want to talk to you. Go away. You're not worth my time.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't eat that week, but I was also not willing to deal with the heartache of constantly being undermined. I'm a human being. I have feelings. I have very strong feelings. I do not like being bullied when I'm trying to get a job done for you. If you can't respect me, or if you can't talk to me on my level, I can't work with you because you're an unreasonable human being. That's what I'm saying. And you have to, as much as I don't have as many resources as I would like, the resources I do have are not necessarily financial. So, and I take a lot in the neck. I take an exceptional amount of stuff in the neck because there are people that put demands on you, and you have to be willing to step up and deal with those. But you also need to know very clearly who you are as a creator and be capable and willing to shut down and walk away from the people that are not worth your time. I would still work with that guy if the money was unreasonably good, but the money was just money, and I can always find somebody else to work with. And that's what I want. I want somebody I can work with. I want somebody who's got some give and take, who's reasonable, who lets me have some of my own creative freedoms. When I created the baby dragon, I had all the creative freedoms in the world, but I also knew that if I turned over a pile of garbage to Rick, not only would I lose a client, I'd lose a friend.
Yeah.
And I've done plenty of work with him. I've done a couple of pieces that are one-offs from things like paintings, like serious paintings. I can never show that stuff, but I get to work on it.
Yeah.
So that's rewarding in and of itself. So you can't, as an artist, the artist can't be unreasonable either. You have to be capable of knowing when it is to pull the trigger on saying, you're a hassle and you're hurting me as a person. I'm not working with you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take this moment.
Sorry.
Notice that I'm not pulling any triggers at all. I just wanted to let you know that I am extremely thankful for the time that you have taken out of your day to speak with me and all of us here at Legends of Tabletop. And thank you so very much, Eric, for your time. And as with everyone, continue being awesome and have a fantastic day.